Hello and welcome, I'm Joshua Barnes and you're watching NewsX World. Let's first take a look at our top stories. The Kremlin has accused Donald Trump of emotional overload as the US president calls Putin crazy following another night of strikes on Ukraine. Russia reports that 96 Ukrainian drones have been shot down in its territory as Ukraine accuses China of providing supplies to Russian military plants. Further military action in Gaza has led to the deaths of dozens of Palestinians in the enclave, according to Hamas-run health officials. This comes as a Gaza Aid Foundation chief quits unexpectedly, saying the group is not neutral in the conflict. The 46th ASEAN summit is underway in Malaysia as East Asian leaders meet amid ongoing global uncertainties. Trump's tariff policy and ongoing Myanmar civil war is a key topic being discussed alongside a China GCC meeting set for tomorrow. French President Emmanuel Macron says that he is confident that US-EU tariff talks will succeed. An EU spokesperson says a 0-for-0 proposal is still on the table after Trump said he would delay a 50% tariff on the 27-nation bloc. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron has secured a major Airbus deal as he makes the first presidential visit to Vietnam in almost a decade. Macron's office has, meanwhile, played down an apparent slap in the face from his wife as his plane touched down in the former French colony. Iran says it won't suspend uranium enrichment to strike a deal with the US after further nuclear talks on the weekend. Iran also says it could survive if US nuclear negotiations end without a deal. King Charles III is visiting Canada with the British monarch set to open the 45th Parliament in Ottawa on Tuesday. Charles, who will be travelling with Queen Camilla, makes his 20th visit to Canada, but first as king, amid national tensions with Donald Trump. All-party delegations from India continue international talks, reaching out to countries following the Pahalgam terror attack and tensions with Pakistan. Conversations following Operation Sindoor are taking place in France, Kuwait and South Korea. We start this hour in Europe as the Russia-Ukraine war escalates. World leaders are increasingly speaking out and ramping up pressure for peace negotiations. French President Emmanuel Macron called for a deadline on a Ukraine ceasefire. He also backed massive sanctions if Russia refuses. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz added that Putin sees peace offers as a sign of weakness, even rejecting a meeting at the Vatican. Meanwhile, the Kremlin dismissed US presidential Donald Trump and his comments that Putin had gone crazy, saying Moscow is acting to ensure national security. On the other hand, Ukrainian intelligence has confirmed China is supplying critical materials to Russia's defence industry, including gunpowder and machine tools. On the war fronts, Ukraine says Russia fired 355 drones and 9 missiles overnight, marking the largest aerial attack of the war. Russia claims it shot down 27 Ukrainian drones today, including 9 over Oriol, 9 over the Kursk region. No casualties or damage were reported where drone debris fell. On the ground, Russia says it has captured 2 villages in northeastern Ukraine and is advancing in Donetsk, according to pro-Russian officials. In another related development, a Russian air defense commander claims President Vladimir Putin's helicopter was at the epicenter of a Ukrainian drone attack on May the 20th in Kursk Oblast. The commander, Yuri Dashkin, said forces were engaged in defending both the airspace and the president's flight during the strike. The claim has not been independently verified and no evidence has been provided so far by Russian authorities. Well, lots of developments in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war to discuss, and joining us to do that is Yulia Kazdabina, a senior fellow at the Ukrainian prison, who is joining us from Kyiv. Yulia, thank you ever so much, as always, for being here with us. I first want to look at this rhetoric that we've seen from Donald Trump overnight and a response from Russia. Trump saying that Putin was crazy after further attacks deep within Ukraine, also targeting the capital, Kyiv. Russia says everybody is emotionally stimulated following these negotiations. What's your opinion about the comments that have been made?
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for having me. The situation looks rather crazy to us in Ukraine because from the very beginning it was clear to us that Putin never wanted peace, and that he wanted to continue the war, and that he wanted to have entire Ukraine under control. And so when President Trump says that President Putin has gone crazy, well, that happened a long time ago. And the key question for us becomes, is anybody going to try and do anything about it? And also about Russian claim that they're protecting their national security. I don't really understand how they are protecting their national security by targeting cities and targeting civilians. So are they trying to say that civilians are the main threat to their national security? I mean, to me, it's absolutely clear that Russia is an aggressor state that continues its aggression and hopes to achieve its goal of capturing the entirety of Ukraine by either military or non-military means, but it's not going to stop.
Yes, Yulia, and looking, of course, at some of the developments with further strikes reported from both sides, that is, of course, 3 days of strong strikes on Ukraine, further Ukrainian drones reportedly taken down and out of the air by Russia. What's the feeling currently within Ukraine, given the amount of aerial action that we're seeing from both countries?
Well, Ukraine never actually denies that it conducts those strikes, but I think we really need to understand the difference in targets. Ukraine does not try to terrorize Russian population. Ukraine strikes either Russian military production facilities or those facilities that actually contribute to Russian military production. So it's actually something that can be termed as active defense. And actually, when President Trump started talking about negotiations, and we agreed to those negotiations, but analysts inside of Ukraine, those who have been following the war with Russia for a long time, they predicted from the very beginning that once an attempt to reach peace through negotiations is going to be made, Russia was going to escalate, because this is what they do. They try not to negotiate from an equal position or position of weakness. They try to negotiate from the position of strength. And so their goal is to break the will, to resist on the part of its opponent or victim in our case. And so
Yes.
we knew this was going to happen. And it's very sad, it's very difficult, but we know who we're dealing with.
Yulia, we are running shorter on time, but a couple more points that I do want to discuss. Firstly, the reports that Russia is continuing its advancements around the Donetsk region, of course, in the east of Ukraine. What's the feeling in Ukraine, given that Russia are reporting further gains?
There are some gains, that's true, and that's not something that makes us happy, but we understand that Russia pays dearly for every single meter of Ukrainian land that they gain, and we understand that the front line is far from collapsing. So, and Ukraine is working on innovative solutions to be able to stop, or at least to slow down Russian advancement as much as possible. But it's clear that Russia is a huge country, much bigger than Ukraine, with much bigger resources, and it has China on its side, and Ukraine has Western partners who are a lot more hesitant to actually help us than the Chinese or Iranians or North Koreans when it comes to helping Russia.
Yes, Yulia, I'm glad you mentioned China there, because this is where I would like to bring an end to our discussion. Ukraine reporting that China has been involved in providing supplies for arms factories and defence infrastructure. China has, throughout this conflict, spoken about being neutral. Do you think that's realistic? And if this evidence and these Ukrainian statements are true, what needs to be done to China, potential sanctions or other, to make sure that they aren't assisting Russia in their war effort?
I'm afraid not much can be done in terms of applying pressure to China. I mean, like how do you stop them doing something that is deniable? I think it's the same problem that we had with Russia for a long time, right? That their actions were deniable, and so it was very difficult to deter them or stop them. And so I think maybe if China and the United States and Europe sit down and they discuss the future of the world, the place of China in the world, and maybe some balance can be found at a higher level, because I do not see how anybody can apply pressure to China, because China is too big and powerful, I think. But I could be wrong, because I'm not a China specialist. Maybe if somebody is a bigger specialist, maybe they would be able to answer this question better than I can.
Yes, no, Yulia, absolutely. You've provided excellent context and insight there. Thank you very much for joining us. We will, of course, continue to explore the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war and all of those elements here on NewsX World. But now we move on to the Middle East. And Israeli airstrikes on Gaza have killed at least 52 people, according to the Gazan rescue teams. The dead include 33 people, mostly children, in a school-turned-shelter in Gaza City. The Israeli military claimed the site was being used by Hamas and Islamic Jihad for command operations. Here's what one of the witnesses of the strike has said.
في الخيمة وفجأة سمعنا الانفجار ما لقينا حالنا إن احنا مرميين الخيمة كلها أطفال وكلها نسوان حوامل والوضع كان صعب واحنا كنا نايمين يعني ما حضروش والشهداء دبوا المكان وصرنا في منطقة رعب يعني لمتى بدنا نضلنا زي هيك احنا في هذا الوضع.
Another 19 people have died in a strike on a home in Jabalia, including women and children, according to local reports. Israel has expanded its offensive across Gaza, hitting over 200 targets in just 48 hours. The military cited weapons, caches, tunnels and militant positions among its targets. World leaders are meeting in Spain and called the war in Gaza inhumane, demanding a halt to it. Spain also called for an arms embargo on Israel and unrestricted humanitarian aid access. Let's listen in to the Spanish Foreign Affairs Minister.
En primer lugar, si la guerra no para, el acuerdo de asociación entre la Unión Europea e Israel, que se fundamenta en su artículo 2 y por lo tanto en el respeto de los derechos humanos, tiene que ser suspendido inmediatamente. Todos tenemos que poner en marcha un embargo de armas. No puede haber.
Meanwhile, aid groups say supplies are still too limited, fueling hunger and unrest across Gaza. The overall war toll in Gaza now nears 54,000, mostly civilians, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. The conflict began with Hamas's October 2023 attack on Israel, which killed over 1,200 people. 57 hostages taken that day remain in Gaza, 34 of who are presumed to be dead. On the diplomatic front, Israel's foreign minister praised President Trump's support during a visit by US Homeland Security Chief Kristi Noem. Meanwhile, the Palestinian delegation won symbolic flag rights at the WHO despite Israeli opposition. And in Gaza, Humanitarian Foundation Chief Jake Wood has resigned. Wood said he was proud of efforts to feed Gaza's hungry, but couldn't ignore humanitarian principles. The foundation says it will still deliver aid this week, aiming to feed over 1 million people. Well, all of these developments, of course, in recent hours. Joining us to discuss them is Lev Aaron, a senior journalist who is joining us from Israel. Lev, of course, further reports of death in Gaza. We know that the military action from Israel is intensifying. We know that Benjamin Netanyahu says he wants to take full control of Gaza. But we've heard there from the Spanish foreign minister, and there has been diplomatic talk around the current state of play in Gaza. Do you think that pressure will have any impact on Benjamin Netanyahu's plan of action with Gaza?
First of all, thank you for having me. There is no doubt that it was far easier for Israel to explain the war domestically and to end in the international arena at the beginning of the war. And now when we see the pictures from Gaza, it is much harder. And Israel is facing a hostile political class in Europe, Spain, Britain, France, and so on. So there is a pressure on Israel, but at least at this stage, Donald Trump is supporting Israel. On the other hand, we need to remember that doublespeak is part of the political culture in the Middle East. Also, the moderate Sunni countries tell Israel, of course secretly, until Hamas is not defeated, we will not be able to bring a new regime in Gaza. As long as the local people are afraid of Hamas, any plan that we will bring, it will be a failure. So in this sense, Netanyahu feels right now that defeating Hamas is the only solution, even if it is unpopular in Europe and also among some chunks in the domestic arena in Israel.
Yes, Lev, I want to look at hostages, of course, a key point in this ongoing conflict, a devastating fact for so many in Israel. Over 50 hostages dead and alive still being held. Since the resumption of military action by Israel in the enclave, we've only seen one hostage released, and that was the US-Israeli hostage. Do you think that Benjamin Netanyahu's operation and planned offensive in Gaza has had any positive impact on the hostage release, or could there be a possibility that this is endangering the lives of hostages if the offensive continues?
First of all, this is what Netanyahu says. Once Hamas feels it is at risk, it will give me a good deal and it will release the hostages. Otherwise, Hamas will give one American hostage, maybe another one, but if he will not give, it will not give all of them. So in this sense, this is like the paradigm of Netanyahu, that only a military solution will make Hamas more flexible. But of course, large chunks of Israelis, mainly in the center left, believe that Netanyahu doesn't care about the hostages, and he knows that they will be killed by Hamas.
Lev, Aaron, on screen currently we are showing a graphic which is talking through the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. One of their senior members of staff their chief in fact, has resigned and quit just ahead of aid being sent into the enclave, saying that the humanitarian aspect of it is not being followed and that neutrality isn't a key figure within this aid distribution. Is there any responsibility on Israel at this point to assist the aid transfer given the clear situation of humanitarian crises in Gaza?
As far as most Israelis are concerned, many of the people who come to help Gaza support Hamas. And many of them do not believe that Israel even has the right to exist. So when one bigwig in an NGO is leaving, I don't see we'll see many tears in the Israeli domestic political arena, even not among the opposition. So this is one. The second thing is that at least this government believes that since we are fighting Hamas, the very fact that we as Israelis, we allow food, fuel, etc., get into Gaza, this is like a big present. And the international community should not scold us, because usually when you fight an enemy, you don't give them the things that eventually go to jihadist Hamas. So although this guy has quitted, I don't think you will see many tears in Israel at this point.
Yes, absolutely. And Lev, of course, that is a big fear with this aid that is now entering into the enclave, is that, of course, it will fall into the hands of Hamas. Let's look forward now, Lev, because talks around a ceasefire, talks around an end to the fighting seem to have stalled in recent days and weeks. Do you think there is any world in which a ceasefire could be agreed, or is this just a journey and a route now towards Israeli occupation of Gaza?
Without the surrender of Hamas in this war, Netanyahu's government will collapse. Because part of the MPs in Netanyahu's government, they have no reason to be part of his government if there is some kind of a ceasefire or a peace. With the only solution is Donald Trump, because Netanyahu could easily walk over the red lines of Biden, but Netanyahu will have to comply and to be obedient to the red lines of Donald Trump. But right now, Donald Trump does not push Israel, so we don't see any red lines. So right now, I don't see a scenario of this war ending without Trump's intervention.
Aaron, we do have some breaking news that I would like to bring our audience. And US President Donald Trump says that he is considering stripping $3 billion in grant money from Harvard University, calling it very anti-Semitic. Trump claims the funds could instead support trade schools across the country. This follows efforts by his administration to target Harvard over alleged ties to China and a hostile campus environment for Jewish students. The administration previously attempted to block the school from enrolling foreign students, citing national security concerns. Of course, the ongoing dispute between Donald Trump and his administration and Harvard University is something that we will continue to cover. Bringing some more breaking news to you, and Kirsty Noem says she has discussed the Trump administration negotiations with Iran during a meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister. Of course, this comes amid ongoing discussions over a nuclear deal with Iran. Joining us once again to discuss this is Lev Aaron, senior journalist joining us from Israel. Lev, coming away slightly from Gaza and looking now at the more regional situation and the broader Middle East region, how significant are these discussions between the United States and Iran over a nuclear deal in Israel?
In the past, Israel enjoyed a consensus in America, a bipartisan support from Democrats and Republicans. Right now, Israel feels that both when Trump meets Al-Julani, the Syrian president, or offers F-35 to Turkey, or having a deal with Iran, not a deal yet, but a plan to have a deal in Iran, Israel cannot really veto it. So right now, Israel is too weak comparing to the United States. The only hope that the Israelis have is that if there is a deal between Iran and the US and Iranians are cheating the deal, Americans will send their jets, their tanks, and so on. But I'm not sure that we are very realistic about it.
Lev, Aaron, thank you ever so much for staying with us for an extended discussion there. We will, of course, bring you all of the developments from across the Middle East as we get them. But moving on, and the 46th ASEAN Summit has opened in Kuala Lumpur, with leaders focused on strengthening regional integration and boosting resilience against global economic disruptions. East Timor, Asia's youngest nation, has made significant progress in implementing its roadmap and enjoys strong support to join ASEAN by the next summit in October. Gus Mao expressed hope for a soon accession to the bloc. Let's listen in to what he said.
I believe so. We try our best. completed many criteria already, but of course there is still one or two or three we will do. And before the end of the year.
Earlier on, the Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, in the opening speech, urged unity against rising protectionism, warning it threatens trade stability. He stressed a rules-based global system and safeguarding ASEAN's growth through open markets. Meanwhile, the ASEAN GCC China Trilateral Summit is set to happen tomorrow. This will focus on new plans for trade, sustainable infrastructure and digital growth in the region. Chinese Premier Li Qiang arrived today to join the first ever trilateral GCC China Summit in Kuala Lumpur. Well, with these developments, joining us to discuss the implications of this summit is Professor Rohan Gunaratne, an international security expert, joining us from Singapore. Professor Gunaratne, as always, thank you for being here with us. While specifics from the summit have not yet been revealed, what do you think the key talking points will be for the ASEAN nations?
There are three key talking points. One is the tariffs imposed by the United States. ASEAN leaders, everyone wants to address it. Number two is the South China dispute, and they all want to discuss the developments in the South China Sea because it's having a big impact on the ASEAN region. And the third is, of course, the most deadly conflict within ASEAN, which is in Myanmar. So much of the discussion was focused on these three burning issues which they seek to address. But of course, the ASEAN leaders will address these issues very intelligently, very gently, and they will do it in their own way without creating any disruptions.
Yes, Professor Gunaratne, looking now at this GCC meeting that's going to take place, we believe, tomorrow, what's the significance of that, given the fact that Donald Trump was recently in the Gulf on a tour of his own?
So what we are seeing is that President Trump wants to work with the world, but he wants to do it his way. And so ASEAN leaders have understood Trump. They have studied Trump, and they want to work with Trump because they realize that for ASEAN as a community to prosper, they have no option but to work with Trump. So they are committed to engaging Trump, but not only as a region, but as individually as nation states. And I believe that the ASEAN summit will do two things. One is it will send a very clear message to the United States that ASEAN is committed to working with the United States. Second is that those leaders, they will also work together. That is, ASEAN as a region will address their challenges. So the timing of the summit is perfect in terms of ensuring that as a regional bloc, it sustains and it even thrives, and it is able to weather these challenges from within and from outside.
Yes, and Professor Gunaratne, to finish this discussion, of course, global instability is something that the world is currently facing. How important is it for the ASEAN nations to remain united and together, not just against ongoing tariff tensions and trade concerns, but also amidst a world that is at war, and of course in Myanmar as well, an ongoing civil war?
The ongoing civil war is a major challenge. In fact, I want to share with you for the first time, the biggest drone operations are not in Ukraine, it is in Myanmar, because there are nearly 100 groups, factions, that are fighting the Myanmar state, the Myanmar military, and they are being supported by various elements from outside and from within. But ASEAN has a way of dealing with these challenges. That is, they will do it steadily and they will do it without creating any angers, any problems. So they will mostly do this behind the scenes while they have a summit that looks perfect. So the ASEAN leaders have had a very long experience of this type of diplomacy. They are very committed to resolving these conflicts very gently and very intelligently, and they will keep the region together because the Americans and the Chinese both are influencing these countries in the region. Some countries have become pro-American, some have become pro-Chinese, but ASEAN leaders want to keep this bloc together.
Professor Rohan Gunaratne, thank you ever so much for joining us and providing that insight. That is all we have time for, but we will continue to bring you more of the latest breaking news from across the world.